The small coffee shop buzzed with the morning rush. Students lined up with backpacks slung over their shoulders, office workers scrolled through their phones, and the smell of fresh espresso filled the air. At the counter, a young college student shuffled nervously. He had ordered a simple latte, just enough to keep him awake for his long day of classes. But as he reached for his wallet, his face changed. He checked his pockets once, then again, patting down his jeans and jacket. His voice cracked as he whispered to the cashier, I think I left my wallet at home." The cashier gave him a polite but tired smile, the kind they offer when they've seen this happen before. The student lowered his eyes, embarrassment burning on his face. "I'm sorry, I can't pay for this," he muttered, backing away from the counter. People in line sighed impatiently. Just as he was about to leave, a calm voice broke through the noise. "Don't worry, I've got this." The student turned around. A stranger, an older man in a simple coat, had stepped forward. Without hesitation, he handed his card to the cashier. "Put his drink on mine," he said with a warm smile. The student froze, his mouth half open. "Sir, you don't have to." The man interrupted gently, "It's just coffee. Go enjoy your day." Before the student could say another word, the stranger picked up his own cup and walked toward the door. There was no expectation of thanks, no request for recognition. Just a simple act of kindness, done quietly. The student finally found his voice and called out, "Thank you." But the man was already gone, blending into the busy street outside. Holding the warm cup in his hands, the student felt something more than just relief. He felt seen, valued, and reminded that kindness still existed in the world. For him, that stranger was more than just a man buying coffee, he was an angel in disguise. And as he sat down to take his first sip, he promised himself one thing. One day, when the chance came, he would do the same for someone else. The highway stretched endlessly under the night sky, illuminated only by the faint glow of passing headlights. A cold wind blew across the empty road as a woman sat inside her stalled car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Her hazard lights blinked in the darkness, the only sign of life on that desolate stretch. She pulled out her phone, desperate to call for help, but the screen read what she dreaded most: no signal. Her heart sank. Fear began to creep in as she imagined being stranded for hours, or worse, all night, alone. Minutes dragged by like hours. Each passing car zoomed past without slowing, the roar of their engines fading quickly into silence. She felt invisible, helpless. Just when she was about to give in to panic, the rumble of an old pickup truck grew louder. It slowed down and finally pulled over behind her. Her breath caught. She didn't know whether to be relieved or cautious. The driver's door creaked open, and a middle-aged man in grease-stained jeans stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. His voice was steady, calm, and reassuring as he said, "Don't worry, ma'am. Let's get you back on the road." Something about his tone melted her fear. He didn't hesitate, didn't ask questions, he just went straight to work. With practiced hands, he opened the hood, shining a flashlight as he adjusted wires and tightened bolts. She watched nervously, but gradually her fear gave way to a strange sense of safety. After only a few minutes, he shut the hood with a firm thud and gave her a nod. "Try it now," he said. She turned the key, and the engine roared back to life. Relief washed over her as tears filled her eyes. "How much do I owe you?" she asked quickly, reaching for her purse. The man shook his head with a faint smile. "Nothing. Just help the next person who needs it." Before she could thank him properly, he waved, climbed back into his old truck, and drove off into the night. She sat there, speechless, the red glow of his taillights fading in the distance. For her, that man wasn't just a mechanic. He was a guardian angel who appeared in her darkest moment, only to disappear just as quietly. The city bus rattled down the crowded street, filled with the usual evening rush. People clutched grocery bags, backpacks, and briefcases, each lost in their own world. Near the front, an elderly man sat by the window, gazing tiredly at the passing lights. As he stood up to get off at his stop, something slipped unnoticed from his jacket pocket, a worn leather wallet that landed softly on the floor. He shuffled out the door, unaware that one of his most valuable possessions had been left behind. A construction worker sitting nearby noticed it. His clothes were dusty, his boots scuffed, his hands rough from a long day of labor. He bent down, picked up the wallet, and opened it carefully. Inside, he saw a stack of bills, credit cards, and a small family photo of the old man smiling with his grandchildren. For a moment, he hesitated. His own wallet was nearly empty. Rent was due, groceries were low. That money could have solved a lot of his problems. The bus rocked forward, and temptation whispered in his ear. But then he looked again at the photo. The old man's gentle smile, the children's happy faces, it reminded him of his own family back home. With a deep breath, he made his choice. He stood up and walked to the driver. "Sir," he said, holding out the wallet, "one of the passengers dropped this." The driver glanced at it, surprised. "You could have kept it, you know. Most people would." The worker shrugged, a small smile on his face. "Wouldn't sit right with me." At the very next stop, the driver spotted the elderly man waiting on the sidewalk, clearly searching his pockets in panic. The bus doors hissed open, and the driver called out, "Sir, is this yours?" The old man's eyes widened in relief. Yes, that's mine. I thought I lost it forever." He clutched the wallet to his chest, tears forming in his eyes. Looking at the worker, he said with emotion, "You're an angel, son." "Thank you." The construction worker just nodded and sat back down, quietly returning to his seat. For him, it was a simple decision. For the old man, it was a miracle. The restaurant was closing for the night. Chairs were stacked on tables, the hum of the dishwasher echoed in the kitchen, and the smell of freshly baked bread still lingered in the air. The owner, Mr. Daniels, stood near the counter, looking at trays of untouched meals that hadn't been ordered. He hated waste. For years, he had made it a quiet habit: pack up the leftovers, load them into his van, and take them to those who needed them most. It wasn't something he advertised, not something he bragged about, it was simply what felt right. That evening, as the city streets grew darker and colder, he drove to the shelter on the edge of town. A few people were already waiting outside, bundled in worn coats, their faces tired but hopeful. As he opened the back of the van, he called out gently, "Hot meals, everyone. Please, take one." The crowd moved forward, hands reaching out, eyes lighting up. For them, this wasn't just food, it was comfort, dignity, and proof that someone cared. Among them was a young boy, no more than 10, his cheeks red from the cold. He clutched his mother's hand tightly as they approached. When Mr. Daniels handed him a warm container of pasta, the boy held it like it was treasure. He looked up with wide, grateful eyes and whispered, "You're like an angel, my mom will eat tonight." The words struck Mr. Daniels deeply. His throat tightened as he smiled back, brushing the boy's hair gently. "Take care of her, all right?" The boy nodded, clutching the food even closer. His mother mouthed a silent, "Thank you," her eyes shimmering with emotion. As the line slowly dwindled, Mr. Daniels continued handing out meals until the very last container was gone. The people left with smiles, carrying not just food, but hope. Standing by his empty van, Mr. Daniels felt no pride, no need for recognition, just a quiet warmth in his chest. He knew he couldn't change the whole world, but for a handful of hungry families that night, he had made a difference. And sometimes, being an angel wasn't about wings or halos, it was about simple acts of kindness, done in silence. The hospital halls were quiet, the kind of silence that only comes after visiting hours are over. Lights were dimmed, machines beeped softly, and most patients had drifted into uneasy sleep. But in one small room, an elderly man lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His breathing was shallow, his hands trembling slightly on the blanket. He had no family nearby, no visitors that day, and the loneliness pressed on him heavier than the illness itself. A nurse named Claire walked past his door, chart in hand. She paused when she saw his eyes, wide open, filled with fear. She stepped inside and spoke softly, "Can't sleep." The man gave a weak smile. It's hard to sleep when you feel like you're alone in the world." His voice cracked with exhaustion. Claire's heart tightened. She checked his monitors, adjusted his IV, and then pulled a chair beside the bed. "You're not alone," she said gently. "I'll stay with you tonight." The old man blinked in surprise. "But, your shift must be over. You should go home." She shook her head. "Home will wait. Right now, you need someone more than I need rest." For the next hour, she sat by his side, holding his hand as he drifted in and out of sleep. When he stirred awake, she read aloud from a small book she carried in her pocket. When he whispered about his fears, she listened patiently, never once checking the clock. At one point, he squeezed her hand and whispered, "God must have sent me an angel in scrubs." Claire smiled, blinking away her own tears. "No, sir," she replied softly. "I'm just someone who cares." By dawn, the man had finally fallen into a deep, peaceful sleep, his face no longer tense with worry. Claire slipped out of the room quietly, exhausted but filled with a quiet sense of purpose. She knew she couldn't cure every illness, couldn't erase every pain, but in that moment, she had done something just as important. She had reminded a lonely soul that he wasn't forgotten. And sometimes, that was enough.